reported another murder today by Mittens the Kitten Perkowski, bringing the total dead to 17. We head over to Weather DD for what that means for your weekend.
Thanks, News DD. You can see here we have a cold front of writing updates coming in from the north. Look for the occasional shower of writing inspiration and possible word tornadoes. To the south, we have some world-building notes about weather creeping in, and that's really going to set us up for a pleasant future, so get your summer plans together now. Back to you, DD.
Thanks, DDN, the #1 name in pod news. Time to get the video rolling. Starting with our writing recap, let's bring up the thermometer and see where we're at. Wowie zowie, that's a big jump. 96,000 words, up from 35,000? So let's just do the math here real quick. Oh, 61,000 since the last episode. Dang, if that doesn't sound impressive. Whoa, hold on there, Slugger. Here comes our old friend Context to rain on that parade a bit. While the previous video was released back in May, the script and word count was from back in February. Man, if only I could write that fast.
No one would be able to oppose my literary power.
So keeping in mind that I'm reading the script in August, that's about 12,000 words a month, give or take when we're breaking up the months. So it's a little less impressive, but nothing to shrug at either, especially for a duck writing this part-time in the evenings after work when the rest of life isn't getting in the way. You know what? I take that back. I think I deserve at least one pat on the back. Not bad. Now, all that said, I'm starting to hit a bit of a wall. I had a very clear vision for the first act. It took a while, but it was percolating in my head for so long that it flowed pretty easily onto the page. As long as I sat my butt down the chair to write, anyway. Now, it ended up being longer than I expected as things got fleshed out, but that's not the point. The point was to get the first act out of my head and onto the page, and now that's all done. The third act still needs some fleshing out, but it's also pretty clear as a concept where it's going to end up and how the story's going to wrap up. Which leaves me with the second act, the connective tissue between the two parts that I really want to write, that I have ideas for, but not really a streamlined vision. So I'm hammering away on it, trying to smooth it out, but I'm also trying to look over the horizon in Act 3 and the story climax, and I get frustrated because I'm not there, and then because I'm distracted, I miss with the hammer and wail my thumb. Yes, ducks have thumbs. At least us cartoon ducks do. So that's where things stand. Putting ideas together and reminding myself the first draft always sucks. And just get it on paper, we'll revise it later if it actually does suck as much as you think it sucks. Now, I could skip ahead and write Act 3 now. You don't have to write sequentially, but I kinda do. I'm still figuring out these characters and learning a lot about them. They're already turning out way differently than I envisioned. So I want to play with them some more before I get to the climax. Okay, enough of that. It's starting to bum me out. On to this episode's world building section. Last time, we wrapped up talking about ocean currents. Important for lots of reasons, but really important for setting up today's topic, weather patterns. Once again, I will be drilling over Artifexian's work in world building. If you want all the gushing, check out my last episode. But I will be applying a lot of his techniques to my work. So check him out if you want a deeper dive into it. Check them links below. First thing we have to do is figure out the general climate zones. And since we could all use a good vacation right now, let's start with the tropical zone. We'll just put this climate bar up here, there we go, wide enough to reach 15 degrees latitude in either direction from the equator. Oh hey baby, anyone ever tell you how hot you look? Whoa, went creeper on my map there. That was weird. Let's never speak of that again. Is it hot in here or just awkward? I think still hot because I have a pocket full of sand looking for a home in a desert. Good thing, that's the next set of zones we're going to put in. We're going to put these strips of sandy adventures waiting to happen between 10 and 30 degrees in each direction. You'll notice that there's some overlap happening between the zones. Well, life isn't perfect, okay? We're just all trying really hard right now, and sometimes things don't line up perfectly. Geez, Dee, settle down. Take a breath, man. There we go. But yeah, life doesn't always line up nice. And by life, I mean, real life, like the planet and all that. We'll talk about these overlap zones in a bit when we make these climates more than just broad zones. Time to start cooling off a bit and move closer to the poles with our humid continental zones. Wait, did I say cooling off? Because brother, let me tell you, I live in a humid continental zone and there ain't nothing cool about this time of year. For those watching in the future, it's summer right now, and it's sweltering. But at least these zones get actual seasons like fall and winter and allergy, or some might call it spring. For some real-world reference, think of this zone as most of the eastern United States. Not Florida, though. They've got their own thing going on, as Florida usually does. Turning the thermostat down some more, we get to the subarctic continental zones. Pretty much most of Canada. This chilly zone drops in at 45 to 70 degrees parallel, which doesn't leave much pure subarctic land the way my map is laid out, but there's enough overlap in zones for some chilly adventuring for my heroes. Maybe even a raft ride down the side of a snowbank. Finally, for the basic regions, the polar zones. Normally, I'd place these around 60 to 80 degrees for the tundra, and then the polar caps up past 75. So my world Santa Claus has a place to live. Except wait, there's no land up here, and no ice caps. Santa's gonna drown! Damn you, global warming! Damn you all to hell! Ahem. But yeah, it's pretty barren and uninteresting up here. Should probably make a note to do something about that in the future. Wouldn't it be nice if things were as easy as this? But nope, we got a lot more to add. Each of these primary zones also has several subzones associated with them. To figure those out, we need to go and figure out the moist parts of our world, not the sweaty parts. Ew, gross. I'm talking about which parts get decent rain and which ones don't. To do that, we have to go back to the work we did last episode with our winds and currents. Go on, get out of here, you. Go. And let's bring those currents back in. Ah, beautiful. If you remember from however long ago it was I released the last video, I marked the sections of land impacted by hot and cold currents. Using that info, we can build on it and get into rainfall predictions. The basics are pretty easy. An area impacted by cold currents will have less rainfall and be drier. Warm currents means more rainy and soggy areas. So, knowing that, let's swap some colors around and see what it looks like. Looks blue. How about that? You can see here the darker blue areas are the warm current impacted areas, so more rain, which makes the light blue areas our drier zones. Let's switch back real quick. Okay, pay attention now, and back to the rainfall map. And back. And back. You might have noticed that the general climate zones and rainfall areas don't match up exactly. In general, the rainfall regions are larger. Let me explain. Quickly now, time's running out. Something we have to keep in mind when figuring out rainfall is mountain placement. Some of you may be familiar with the concept of a rain shadow. This video is brought to you by Rain Shadow Legends. Ha, just kidding, we're not big enough to be sponsored. Basically, one side of the mountain range gets all the rain, and the other side gets bupkis, typically resulting in a desert in the mountain's rain shadow. Let's look at some quick examples of that. The main mountain ranges on Alpha are great examples. The warm air is coming off of the ocean and will hit the mountains, keeping the moisture on the right side. If we slide down the peninsula, we see the same thing. Over in the Tri-Islands, there's a good example of the island being split by both their currents and the mountains. The other thing that impacts it is just how big a strip of land is. The Upper Alpha Peninsula is a good example. It's a comparatively thin strip of land, so it's covered in the low rainfall area. These lower beta islands are another great example. Because of their size, I'm marking them as more warm current dominated, on the macro level at least. If the story takes place here, I'll keep in mind that the western parts of the island are probably going to be on the drier side than the rest. And there we have a pretty basic rain map. I'm sure it's not perfect, but if I wanted to sit here and make a rain forecast for a fictional world 100% accurate, I would never get around to writing. So, flagging this as good enough for the time being. Speaking of good enough, that's what I'm going to say about this video's content. Let's take a look at our to-do list for next time. Let's see here. Add in the subzones, make the climate areas actually conform to the land and not just hovering boxes, and maybe do something about the polar areas. Sounds like a solid plan. Stay dry out there. Unless you're a duck, then stay wet.
Quack. Ah!